The Pat Kelsey Coach of the Year train is continuing to pick up steam.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome in to this Monday edition of the Locked On the Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. On Friday, the Naismith College Coach of the Year watch list was released, and the Louisville head coach Pat Kelsey was included on that list. The PK Coach of the Year train continues to pick up steam. We'll discuss the men's basketball victory over Florida State. It wasn't a great performance, but the Cardinals got the job done, and they increased the winning streak to 5. We'll also explain how elite Chucky Hepburn has been for the Cardinals this season and how much better he's been than what people believe. To start the show, I do want to talk about something. We lost a local media member last week when Cardinal Sports Zone men's basketball beat writer Ben Gumble passed away on Wednesday. I had the opportunity to meet Ben when I started writing for CSZ just a couple of years ago. And with us writing for the same site, I had a good amount of opportunities to create a friendship with him. I talked a ton of basketball with him. Really, really good dude. Really down-to-earth guy, fantastic writer, was enthusiastic about the Cardinals program, covered the team enthusiastically even when the program was struggling, and just stayed committed to being the men's basketball beat writer. I was able to create a friendship with him, and ultimately just extremely fortunate to have been given the privilege to be a colleague of Ben's, but more incredibly fortunate to have called Ben a friend. Like I said, really down-to-earth guy. The world lost a brother, a son, a friend, a great and fantastic writer, and an extremely avid Louisville fan. Ben Gumble was just 28 years old. Pat Kelsey, in his post-game press conference after the Florida State win, immediately opened things up by paying respects to Ben's life and just a stand-up guy. Pat Kelsey continues to show how much he cares for this community, and that's why I am so sure that he was the right guy for this hire, not just because of what he can do coaching on the basketball court, but just his ability to relate with this fan base and show that he cares about this community and this city and this program and the people in it, and that he understands that it's just larger than sports sometimes. And I'm going to miss Ben tremendously, and I appreciate Pat Kelsey for his words about Ben, as I'm sure his family and close friends do as well. So I wanted to take the time to pay my respects to Ben on this show, and I appreciate you all for allowing me to do so. Pat Kelsey was included in the Naismith College Coach of the Year watch list that was released on Friday. Of course, this has been a narrative that we as Louisville fans and even some in the national media have continued to fuel and discuss because of how good of a job Pat Kelsey has done as the Cardinals head coach in year one after all this program has been through. I'm going to read off these names on the list so you have them for reference. Greg Gard from Wisconsin, Dennis Gates from Missouri, Florida's Todd Golden, Memphis's Penny Hardaway, Tom Izzo from Michigan State, Dusty May from Michigan, Grant McCaslin from Texas Tech, Ben McCollum from Drake, Matt Painter from Purdue, Rick Pitino from St. John's, Bruce Pearl from Auburn, Richard Pitino from New Mexico, John Shire from Duke, and Kelvin Sampson from Houston. So I think what we had to talk about is that know that there is a distinct difference from should he win the award and will he win the award. For me, I believe that Pat Kelsey should be the National Coach of the Year. And you can say that I'm biased, and I am, because I follow this team more closely than the national media does. So instinctively, I understand just how bad things were. And you can understand, the records weren't great the past couple of years, but it sort of spanned beyond that. And there was a clear disconnect between the coaching staff and the fan base. And that's the difference between will he win or should he win? Because if you go back and you look at who's won this list or who's won this award over the past 5 years. So let's look at the past 5 years. Anthony Grant from Dayton. That team was 29-2 during the season. You had Mark Few from Gonzaga. That team was 31-1. 21-22 was Providence. Ed Cooley, they were 27-6, top 15 in the AP poll. Jerome Tang at Kansas State in 22-23. They were 26-10, but got into the top 15 and made a little bit of a run that year. And then Dan Hurley at UConn this past season after winning back-to-back national championships. So one point that we made when we talked about Pat Kelsey as a potential Coach of the Year candidate about a month ago was that it seems that the committee or powers that be that decide really, really put a ton of emphasis into winning basketball games. And at the time, Louisville was in the middle of a 10-game winning streak, but they weren't to that point yet. I think with the Cardinals having won 14 of their last 15 games, 15 of their last 16 games, it creates some of that substance that the committee is looking for. Because right now, the Louisville Cardinals are 21-6, and they are in the AP top 25. Now, Bruce Pearl and Auburn are having a fantastic season. No doubt about that. John Shire and the Duke Blue Devils, same thing. Todd Golden, same thing. Kelvin Sampson with Houston. All of those teams have less than 5 losses, and they have played a better strength of schedule. Outside, I don't know if Duke has played a better strength of schedule. I would imagine that they have because they had a really tough non-conference slate. But those other teams, they play in tougher conferences than Louisville. So their resumes and their records currently are more impressive than the Louisville Cardinals. The ACC is not as good of a conference, and it's not even really worth trying to argue that they are, because I'm not really sure how you could. But what Pat Kelsey, or what gives Pat Kelsey more of an advantage in this discussion is because he took over a situation that was hands down, without a doubt, worse than any of these other coaches. And some of these coaches are doing a great job. Dennis Gates, really good job this year. Missouri was not a great team last year. However, Gates was the head coach of Missouri last year. So I don't know how much that is really factored into the equation, is that he was still the head coach. I think it was his second year last year. Rick Pitino has done a great job at St. John's. Ben McCollum has done a great job as the first-year coach at Drake, but Drake was a really good team last year. Dusty May has done a great job at Michigan. Michigan wasn't in as bad of a spot as Louisville was, even though they weren't all that great. And truthfully, I still do think that Louisville at 21-6, even though the ACC is not as great as the other conferences, I think Louisville's better than some of these fans of other conferences want to claim that they are. It's not like they're barely squeaking by in conference play. Like, they're winning most of these games, if not all of them, outside of a couple, by double digits. So back to the whole what they took over narrative. Pat Kelsey didn't just take over a really bad situation. He took over a historically bad situation. The Louisville Cardinals have not been to the NCAA tournament since 2019. They haven't won a tournament game since 2017 when Donovan Mitchell was a Cardinal, when Rick Pitino was still the head coach. To make matters worse, they won 4 games in 2022-23, and then they won 8 games. All that is coming on the heels of finally being able to turn the page of, half of a decade or more than half a decade of scandals, one after another, after another, spanning multiple coaching tenures. Louisville was a laughingstock of college basketball. He took over in, late March? Didn't have a single player. Every single player on scholarship this year, brand new. And not to mention, 2 of those projected starters, Case and Pryor, Corin Johnson, both went down with season-ending injuries before December. So not only did he step into one of the worst situations in NCAA history, but he's also dealing with a shorthanded team, and he's having a ton of success. He's not just turning things around. He is completely transforming this team from one year to the next. Tied for the largest winning total improvement this year. And he's doing it with brand new players. For a program that hasn't sniffed the tournament in almost 5 years or over 5 years. They would have made it in 2020, but they didn't. No one made that tournament. So I understand that the rebuttal is going to be, Auburn is better, Duke is better, Houston is better. Sure, I agree. They are. And I'm not taking away anything from these other coaches because Pat Kelsey's in with some good company on this list. This is a great list. But you look at the job that he's doing, and I would say that it is the most impressive coaching job this season, regardless of what you want to say about the conference, because the whole lack of conference talent or up and down the board, it sort of gets overshadowed by the fact that Kelsey took over a completely worse situation than any other coach on this list. So that's just my opinion. And of course, I'm biased, but that's just how I see it. And it seems like national media members are continuing to, say, well, hold on, let's wait a second. Look at what Pat Kelsey's doing. So we'll see how serious of a candidate he becomes at the end of the season. But Kelsey's squad got win number 5 on this new winning streak by taking down Florida State on Saturday. Wasn't a pretty performance, but the Cardinals got the job done. March basketball is almost here. There's no better way to get in on the action than Prize Picks, the best play for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. I love how I can make my picks in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. And when I win, my money hits my account as little as 15 minutes. There's no waiting around. Download the app today or use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's the code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Cardinal fans, I want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. The Cardinals were back in action after almost a full week off after beating Notre Dame. They defeated Florida State on Saturday at the KFC Yum Center 89-81, improving to 21-6 and 14-2 in conference play. Now, we found out either just before the game or right after the game, it was confirmed that it seemed that illness is going around this time of year, and the Louisville Cardinals got hit pretty hard this past week to the point to where Kelsey mentioned that they had to social distance in film study. So some of these guys didn't have their legs in the game against Florida State, and that's really tough to hear considering that Florida State is year in and year out one of, if not the most physical team in the ACC and across the country. A ton of size, a ton of strength, a lot of athleticism. Florida State is a tough team to defend, and when you have sickness going through your program, taking away some of that stamina for a rotation that's not really the largest anyways, that's tough to deal with. But Louisville was able to get the job done. It wasn't really pretty. The Cardinals did pretty well on offense, 89 points, but they gave up 81. And I looked to that second half to where the Seminoles scored at 50 points, and I think, well, what went wrong in this half? And it just felt like Florida State just did a great job of getting downhill and finishing around the rim, which is what they do. They don't shoot the ball well from three-point line, but they have a ton of size and athleticism, and they just get to the paint, and they make you pay. Jameer Watkins had 23 points for the Seminoles. Malik Ewan had 19 points. It was more the same from the first matchup to where you basically had two guys going off, but the Cardinals didn't really have an answer for either of those two players. Now, Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards had to deal with foul trouble for the majority of the second half. Hepburn picked up I'll say a cheap third foul at the end of the first half, which was not a foul, but was called a foul. And then Edwards picked up two quick fouls in the second half. Both of those players had to alter the way they play defense because they were playing in foul trouble. And this is really the first time all season where you saw both of those guys have to change their defense because of the foul trouble. But offensively, 4 players in double figures. Hepburn had 29 points, 17 of 19 from the free throw line. Terrence Edwards, 16 points, 6 of 11 from the field. You had Javon Hadley, 18.11 rebound, double-double. Rain Smith, 3 of 10 from the field for 11 points, most of that coming in the first half. Overall, not a bad day at the offense for the Cardinals offense. Not a bad day at the office for the Cardinals offense. 50% from the field, 7 of 21 from 3, 33%. Not horrible, but not great. Florida State, 23% from 3, 4 of 17, but they shot 54.2% from the field. Louisville out-rebounded the Seminoles. They turned the ball over one less time than the Seminoles. But the issue for me was the points in the paint. Florida State had over half of their points coming from around the restricted area, 50 of those 81 points. And it just felt like if Louisville was ever going to run a zone, that would probably be the game in which they would. They didn't, but they still were able to get the victory. They were up by double digits for the most part of the first half. 20-point lead, but the Seminoles were able to get the lead a little bit lower, cut into the lead a little bit, and the first segment of the second half, they cut the lead in half, and it was just an all-out battle, just one after another, both teams trading good offensive possessions. Credit to Florida State for continuing to go with what was working. I think if you look at the numbers with Louisville shooting over or double Florida State's free throws, I think it's misleading because the way that game was officiated in the second half, I thought was pretty funny because, again, I have no problem with allowing teams to play physical, but it's when you're inconsistent with the whistle and you let one team play physical on one end, but on the other end, you call it pretty tight. I don't understand. I also find it funny that Leonard Hamilton was standing in the corner on the court during every Louisville offensive possession in the first half, and then when Florida State switched sides, it was odd. It was really ironic. He didn't do that at all when Florida State was on offense, and it costed Javon Hadley a long rebound, a loose ball, and it was called Florida State basketball, and Hadley's like, look, Leonard Hamilton is on the court. What are you supposed to do? Didn't matter. He stayed in the corner every single play in the first half. And then magically, he was like, you know what? Maybe I don't have to stand there when we're playing offense. I think that that's pretty ironic. But nonetheless, Louisville gets the job done. It wasn't a great performance, but Florida State is a team that, makes games tough because as a team that likes to be the enforcer, going up against Florida State can be challenging because they use that physicality to their advantage. They always have, and we'll see if they always will in the post-Leonard Hamilton era. So the Cardinals complete the season sweep over the Seminoles. They increase the winning streak to 5 and now turn their attention to the final regular season road game against Virginia Tech on Tuesday. But before we preview that matchup on tomorrow's episode of the show, we've got to have a very honest conversation about how Chucky Hepburn's playing. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a larger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my Houston Rockets for a late-game rally or picking Jalen Green to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. And plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Here's the best part. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Cardinal fans, it's time to have a conversation. And what I'm about to say, you understand because you watch these games. The rest of the national landscape doesn't. If they do, it's not as much as we watch and pay attention to this team, right? Chucky Hepburn has been, and I don't like to toss this term out a ton because I don't want to water down the term, but it's the truth. Elite. Chucky Hepburn has been elite this year. He has been not only one of the most valuable players in the conference, but in the country as well. The workload that he has to continue to be responsible for on both ends of the court. He leads the team with 15.6 points a game, 6.0 assists a game, 2.5 steals a game, and is one of the team's best three-point shooters. He has basically a 2 assist to turnover ratio, and considering his usage, it makes it that much more impressive. You look at the averages, and it's clear that he's a great ball player. And he's having a great season. And he is one of the main reasons why Louisville has been able to go 21-6 this year. But when you break it down and you watch these games and you realize how different the Cardinals are on both ends of the court when he's not playing, you then start to come to terms and grasp how important he is and just how elite he is as well. Because you can look at the box score in the averages and come to the conclusion that he should be a first-team All-ACC selection. He should be. You can't have the conversation without him. But he's also one of the best point guards in the country. And he proves it each and every game. You look at the offensive side of the ball, not to mention his responsibility load as the lead ball handler. He creates a ton of open looks for other guys. His court awareness and his court vision, I would say top 5 in the country. His ability to get to his spots be a 3-level scorer, and just fuel this Cardinals offense. It's incredible. It's awesome to see this, because what did we say in the offseason? Well, if you were like me, you didn't think that there was any chance that Chucky Hepburn would be this team's go-to scoring option. You thought, yeah, he's going to be a reliable scoring option that leads the Cardinals offense. But I didn't think that we understood at the time just how pivotal of a role that he was going to play. And that, or this whole notion, fuels my belief that guard play raises your ceiling more than anything else. You have elite level guard play, which Louisville does at the moment with the backcourt of Hepburn and Terrence Edwards Jr. and Rain Smith. That's why I think that the Cardinals could be a dark horse in the NCAA tournament. But more on that when we get closer to the big dance and Selection Sunday. Hepburn's ability to be the focal point of the Cardinals offense as a lead scorer and a lead facilitator, it's awesome. But not only that, he is the Cardinals' best point of attack defender. He's one of the best on-ball defenders in the country, averaging 2.5 steals a game. Active hands, extremely effective on-ball defense. It's hard to shake Hepburn off. And he does a great job of jumping passing lanes. Incredibly elite basketball mind. And the leadership is the third part of this equation. We know the responsibility he plays on offense, the initiative that he takes on the defensive end. But then as the leader of this team, the fan favorite, sort of the face of the team, if you will, what he's been able to do, it's elite. And it's time that we, not only as a fan base, of course, I'm not talking to you, all the fans that make this show your first listen of the day, which I definitely 100% appreciate. I'm talking to the rest of the college basketball landscape. Let's call it how it is, guys. Chucky Hepburn's elite. First team All-ACC selection, hands down. If he's not I won't call it award, but the recognition immediately loses merit. It immediately loses relevance to me. And I don't like to be this way because I'm biased. I understand. I try not to be in this role as much as I can. I don't like to be a homer. But at some point, you just have to call it how you see it. Chucky Hepburn is the best guard in this conference, and he's one of the best point guards in America. And it's time that the rest of the conference, and it's time for the rest of the country to start acknowledging that. And I'm really excited to see Chucky Hepburn put his talent on full display in the postseason. So when we come back on tomorrow's episode of the show, we're going to preview the final road game of the season. Virginia Tech is the next opponent for the Cardinals. That's going to wrap up this episode to start the week. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Go Cards.